Imagine a place where gang violence runs rampant, and you're living homeless due to your parents kicking you out of the house around the age of 15. You have two jobs, and you don't get done with work till midnight. That is reality of my dad growing up in his teenage years in Miami. And though he is now in a great and stable working position now, that did not come without tribulations and trials throughout his life. My father is an amazing man who embodies many ideals, and though he is nowhere near perfect, he is an amazing person. And today I'll be talking about his hardships, his endurance, and his wealth. And what I mean by that is growing up in Miami, it's not easy. Back when he was there, he lived there, he called it the city of Miami cradled crime back then, in which that means he saw a lot of crime, living in the projects, living in homeless shelters, things like that. His schooling wasn't that great either, but this is where you understand that life wasn't going to give him any favors and that he had to work for his goals, just like David versus Goliath. Now, the hard part on him was his education. The people around him weren't great. And his school, he said, was a war zone at that time because there was always there was rival gangs always shooting at the beginning of every day. Now, this was also a hard time for him due to him having two jobs and having almost no time for school. It was the hardest part for him because being in school, working two jobs, having to, try to make sure he didn't get shot every day. He says it was like a dark spot in a hole with no ending, just a hole with darkness. That was his hard past. Now, let's get into his real claim to freedom and why he's an inspiration to me, right? His endurance. He says at the time of no school and two jobs while having no home, his options were limited. So, he went to the only one he can think of, the military. That was his way out of the jewel of crime that was Miami. That's what he got out of it. And to me, he's like a hero, kind of like Superman, I guess, in that way. And he just like a man of steel, I guess you could say. Now, after the military, when he got out of the military, a new perspective of life had opened up. He realized he could work. He didn't have to worry about life day to day. He didn't worry about having to think, oh, am I going to get hurt today? How am I going to provide for myself? Things like that. The military took lives, but it also gave him his life. In the military, an environment that made him envy him and allowed him to envelop the skills for the later half of his life. This allowed him to become a security guard for other places, things like that, for jobs later in life. And the military allowed him to go from a life that he thought would be nothing but trouble and a lot of pain into something that gave him light in a tiny thing of darkness so he could spread out and live his true dreams. And now I'll talk about the wealth he had gathered. Now, what I mean by wealth, I don't mean the traditional sense of money and things of that, but rather in knowledge and with wisdom that he had. And what I mean by that is, when I was born, he taught me a lot of things. He passed down a lot of wisdom to me, whether it be physical knowledge or in book smarts to help me to get to the point where I'm at. He would always say when I was younger, keep trying, don't give up, just keep trying. Like, whoa, nothing's going to go wrong, just keep going. And he was a great father with cooking, cleaning, and teaching. Those were his greatest aspects of it all. And he really did. He is the embodiment of endurance. He would not stop. No matter how bad his life is, no matter how hard it got, no matter how dangerous it was, he kept getting up and he kept moving forward. He never stopped to think, oh, let me resort to something bad like crime or something like that. He thought to himself, no, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to finish this out. And I'm going to make something of my life, no matter how bad it was. In the end, talked about his hardships, his endurance, his wealth. My father is he's an embodiment of many ideals to me. He represents the good that could happen no matter how much bad goes around. And he still is an amazing person, though he's not perfect at all. Now, my father's life was close to hell, very, but he's never told me that he regretted what happened back then. He envies it. He understands that, to make sure things go right, You got to do it for yourself. You can't rely on everything around you to just give it up. And he never will go in a bad direction, and he'll never let me go in a bad direction, and he's still alive and well to this day because of that. And the end result is now my father showing me, and hopefully others, no matter how hard life can be, the only thing you can go do is forward and never be put down.